Good morning. How you feeling today, Momentum? Man, I'm telling you what, Christmas came in with some lightning last night. Came in strong. But I'm glad you're in the house today, whether you're tuning in here in Gulf Breeze to the humidity of Florida, or you're online, whether you're in Iowa or Idaho or somewhere even colder. We're so thankful that you're tuning in, whether you're sick or in a coffee shop. Thank you for being here. We're one church with multiple locations, and so that means right here in Gulf Breeze, along the Gulf Coast to Navarre, and then tonight at Blackwater within the walls of a prison, men are going to hear about the good news that Jesus came. And we're excited about that because we're on mission to lead people to passionately follow Jesus. And so everything we do here is driven by that. And if it's your first time here, we're so honored that you came. In fact, all we ask of you is that you feel at home today and that you step right outside after the gathering to the blue tent and get a free gift just to say thanks for being our guest today. We'd love to connect with you, answer any questions that you may have. And we're going to sing a new song this morning. It's Christmas. And this new song is called Here Comes Heaven, because the truth is Jesus came for us. He not only sacrificed by dying, he sacrificed by coming down and being born as a human. And he came, so we're going to celebrate that this morning. Children weep no more. Hope is on the horizon. Weary world, behold your promised Messiah. Angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Here comes heaven. Sinner, wait no more. Love is broken the silence. Come, let us adore. The Savior is with us. All your voices. Angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Here comes heaven. Here comes heaven. Now behold his glory, glory in the highest. All the earth rejoice, for Christ is born. Now behold his glory, glory in the highest. All the earth rejoice, for Christ is born. Oh, you're born for us. Over all who mourn, breaks the dawn of salvation, and darkness reigns no more, for Jesus is greater. He is greater. Angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. Christ is born in Bethlehem. You guys can have a seat this morning. So come and sit
What's up, Momentum? Good morning. I want to take a moment and I want to welcome all of our campuses today. Gulf Breeze, do you feel it half as good as you look today? That was weak sauce to the max. And so, this is Momentum Church. We don't do things halfway. So if we're going to do it, we're going to go all the way. I said, Gulf Breeze, do you feel half as good as you look? Much better. Much better. Let's welcome Navarre. What's up, guys? My people. Well, let's take a moment. I want to celebrate. Can we welcome our Blackwater campus today? What's up, guys? Better show up. This is good. And then can we take a moment and just celebrate everyone that's joining us online today? One time. In case you didn't know, we have people tuning in to what God is doing right through Momentum Church at the Gulf Coast. They're tuning in from all over the world. There are countries that are watching I can't even tell you about because that's how cool God is. Isn't that amazing? I'll celebrate that. Yeah, Tyler. That's amazing. And we're really excited about that. But before we jump in, I want to take a moment and I want to celebrate and I want to honor our Momentum music team. Aren't they incredible? Both campuses. Amazing. Matt and Caleb and the rest of the team have done an incredible job. And in the industry, we call this dropping. They dropped a brand new Christmas song for us this week, and this is so cool. And I love this song, and Matt and Caleb are incredible, and the rest of the team is incredible. They wouldn't tell you this, but I can say this. We've already had a bunch of churches that have listened to it and said, that song's so good, we're going to do that at our church. How amazing is that? Wherever you get your music from, I would just tell you, this song will make your life better. It'll make hair grow back in places that it left. It'll take hair away in places that it that it came. It shouldn't have been, that kind of weird stuff. It'll make you more attractive to the opposite sex. This song is that good. It's called Adore, and you don't want to miss it. We just wrapped up a series last week called This is Generous. And in this series, it was amazing. It was so helpful. We've heard such incredible feedback from so many people about how what we talked about has made their life better because it was not only relevant to what they were walking through, but it was practical. We saw, we started and we covered the gambit of what does God have to say when it comes to your finances. And in this series, we basically said this phrase, and this phrase was this, generosity generates goodness for what? Generations, that's right. And so this series has been so amazing, and we went everywhere from, returning the first 10% of your income to God through the tithe and how your money and your heart are connected. And what does God say about that? And then we talked about generosity. And then we ended an incredible series last week with Ricky up here bench pressing 400 pounds. I don't know, I just felt so much tension watching him. I was like, oh, Lord. See, this thing about Ricky, I pray. I say, Lord, let me be as big as Ricky one day. I say, Lord, hear the prayers of your servant. And I want to be big and swole like Ricky. And so it's just cool. But no, and Pastor Tim taught us through that illustration, what it is to dump the debt and really get out of debt, and how basically it's a lot of times when you carry a lot of debt in life, it's sitting under 400 pounds of weights, trying to lift it off of you. And none of us are that strong. And so why not just go ahead and get rid of the debt you can? It was so practical. And here's the deal. We know people were traveling and the holiday was there, and so if you missed any week of this series, it's totally okay. In fact, all of our messages are available online on demand for you to get caught up. Or even if you heard the message and you're that was amazing, I'm good with that, but my cousin needs to hear this, my friend down the street needs to hear this, you can actually go online to our YouTube page, to our Facebook page, to our website, and you can actually share those messages with people that need to hear it the most. Well, so before we jump into the message today, I figure I should introduce myself, because I see it in some of your eyes. You're like, you're not Pastor Tim. You're right. I'm not. My name's Tyler. I'm the campus leader for our Navarre campus, and thank you. I'm so excited and privileged to be with you here today and given this word from God. And what was cool was we had a couple of guest speakers in this last series. This is Generous, and they both showed pictures of their family. So I was like, I want to do that. That seems cool. And so I brought some pictures of my family to show you on the screen if you'll turn. So that is that was us on Halloween. That is my smoking hot wife, Deidre. Incredible. I pray this prayer every day. I say, Lord, help her not to realize how much out of my league she is. I'm afraid one day she's going to wake up and go, whoa, But no, I'm so blessed. And then that is our now 11-month-old daughter, Lucille. And so I brought another picture of Lucille for you there. Yeah. She's beautiful, man. A little heartbreaker. She's at home today, fighting a little cough. And so, so she turns 11 months old today, which is super cool. And she's in this phase now where all she wants is mom, right? She's in this phase where all she wants is mom. She doesn't want nothing to do with dad. She's all I want is mom. And I tell Deidre, I'm like, listen, you're supplying her with something that I can't compete with. So just slow your rolls a little bit there, and people say, they go, she's going to go through a different phase, and then she's going to want is dad. And I'm like, yeah, but that's a dangerous game she's playing, because when that phase comes, I don't know that I'm still going to want her, Just kidding. I'm glad you laughed. Some of you were like, he's a monster. No, this is cool. But no, some people do this now where they look at Lucille and they look at me and they tilt their head a little bit and they go I just don't see how, Tyler, you made something so beautiful. Yeah, and I just kind of want to tilt my head back at them, and once I get through the feeling of wanting to shake them really hard, I just say, what? Say that again? Yeah, they say just like that. They say I don't know how you could make something so beautiful. And I'm like, if you can't see how this beautiful person made that beautiful person, I can't help you. No, I'm just joking. But no, this is cool. Today, I want to talk to you for just a few moments about something really big. In fact, what we're going to talk about today is so big, it has the power to prevent you from making any other catastrophic mistake in your life. Wow, that's big. That is big. And so, it's this struggle that's been going on for a long time. And this struggle, it started at the very beginning of time. This struggle, pretty much since day one, maybe day 4 or 5, this battle has been raging on. And it's still raging on today. So many of you fought this on your way in this morning, and you're going to fight it right now and then as we leave. This battle has claimed the lives of many men, many great women. It's cost kings kingdoms. This battle has cost the presidents the White House. This struggle that we're going to talk today is big, and if we really get through it, we can understand what it takes to never have to make a big catastrophic mistake in our lives ever again. But before we jump into that, I want to take you to a story in the life of a man named Joshua. We're going to see this struggle played out in real time. And so Joshua was the leader of the Israelites. Those were God's people. And then after Moses died, Joshua rose up to lead. So God told Moses, take my people into the land that I promised them. But the problem is they could not believe that God could do it. Moses couldn't lead his people to believe that God could do it. And so they said, God, we don't think it's going to happen. We don't believe it's going to happen. And God said, okay, well, if you can't see it, then you're not going to see it. And so God allowed them to then wander in the desert for about 40 years until Moses and all the people that couldn't see the promises of God fulfilled, until they died, until that what was left was Joshua and the people that could see God fulfill the promise. and take them to the land that he promised them. And so Joshua is now on this quest with the Israelites, which are God's people, and they come into this new land, and right away they're faced with their first big battle for the land. There's this city named Jericho, and if you grew up in church at all, or if you listen to like big swing jazz music, like you know where this is going, like Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, like you know where this is going. And so this is cool. Let's read this together. Joshua 5. Verse 13 says, when Joshua was near the town of Jericho, he looked up and he saw a man standing in front of him with a sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and demanded, are you friend or foe? Now, let's just pause real quick. Like, it's kind of debated. There are different theologians and people that, like, study the scriptures, like, full-time. Like, they kind of go back and forth, and they don't always agree on who this was that Joshua was talking to. Some people believe that this was, like, an early representation or an early appearance of Jesus, which is a kind of Christophany. And there are other people that think this was just an angel. I say just an angel. They say, like, this was an angel. But I wasn't there, to be honest with you. I wasn't there. So I don't know exactly who this was. But when we look at how this person responds, it's not really always super important about who this person is. Listen to this. This is so good. So Joshua asked, are you friend or foe? Neither one, he replied. I am the commander of the Lord's army. And at this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence and said, I am at your command. Joshua said, what do you want your servant to do? And so this is important because right now God is letting Joshua know, listen, you're not in charge. Like, it's just important you understand this and get on board with this. Like God's saying, listen, I'm the one I'm the commander here. Like, I'm the captain now. God is telling Joshua, like, I'm in charge. And he says, like, you can either get on board with what's going on or you can get out of my way. But either way, you are not the captain of this. And this is so important. The reason why this is important is because that same God is the God that's about to give him the instructions on how to defeat Jericho. But, and this is in verse 15, picks back up right here. The commander of the Lord's army replied and said, take off your sandals, for the place that you are standing is holy. And Joshua did as he was told, and I put in my commentary here, I said, I'll bet he did. And this is so important, because before the battle even begins, Joshua had to submit authority to God. This is important. This wasn't Joshua going, okay, God, let me hear your way. Like, okay, what do you think? Seems rough, I'm not going to do that. Like, no, Joshua submitted to the authority of God first. And the reason why that is so important is because once he establishes to Joshua that he is in control, and I should say once Joshua establishes that God's in control, then God reveals the plan to Joshua. Then God tells him the battle plan for defeating Jericho. And this is important because I want you to get this. It says, submission always precedes revelation. It's not the other way around. It's not like, okay, God, tell me what the way to do it is, and I'll just consider if I want to do this or not. Like, it's not, okay, God, I'll take into consideration, like, your plan. Like, no, it is submission. It is, yes, okay, God, whatever you say, the answer is yes. Now, what's the next step? And it's not until then. It's not until this, not until Joshua said, okay, God, you're in control, then God begins to give him the battle plan. And what that means is I have to submit to the authority of God in my life first. So you're stumbling, you're wondering, what should I do? Like, start with submitting to the authority of God first and saying, God, you are first, you are in control, you are the captain now. Because here's the truth. Have you ever wondered why sometimes in your life you just keep hitting your head against the wall in certain areas or certain arenas of your life? You ever wondered that? You ever wondered why things aren't changing? Why I just keep going through the same motions and I'm experiencing the same things over and over and over again? And here's how this plays out. I mean, not for you guys. You guys are like super Christians, you know, so just put that face on like I'm speaking to your neighbor, okay? Like, so just go, yeah, this is so good. I'm so glad they're going to hear this. Or this is for your husbands, for your wives. Not for you. You guys are super Christians. But like for normal people, like normal followers of Jesus like me, this is how this has played out in my life in the past. Like, it's okay, God, I'm having a hard time with my finances. I make this much money, and it just seems like to never be enough. Oh, God, I just can't seem to pay all the bills. God, what should I do? And then God says, well, are you returning your tithe to me first? God says, like, why don't you trust me with that? Like, trust me with 10% of your money. And then I'll bless the other percent. And we go, yeah, but no, that's okay. That's hard. I don't want to do that. God goes, just trust me with a little bit. Like, and I'll bless the rest of it. And God's going, the plan's in there all along. Like, I'm not hiding this from you. And we're going to talk about in a few moments how God's ways are not complicated. They're simple, but they are demanding. And so let's talk about relationships, right? Like, so maybe you're here and you just keep hitting your head with relationships and you're like, I don't know why. Like, it always ends in a mess, and, I always, either get hurt or I'm hurting somebody else, and I'm messy, and, I feel like I've been hurt in the past, and so, I want to either get out at the first sign that they're going to hurt me because I don't want to be hurt again, and the truth is hurt people. And you go, God, what should I do? God, what should I do? What do I need to do to make this to change? And then God says, are you honoring me with your relationship? What do you mean? Are you putting me first? Like, are you, honoring me together in your relationship? Like, well, no. Did you move in with him? Did you move in with her? Well, yeah. God goes, are you even, putting them before yourself? Well, that's hard. That's hard. I'm not, I'm not putting them before myself, God. I mean, come on now. We live in the economy of number one. I'm not going to put someone else's feelings ahead of myself. And here's the truth, right? It sounds crazy when we say that out loud. I get that. But how often in your life, and in how often in my life, has that exact scenario played out? And we would never say that out loud. We would never stiff-arm God and go, yeah, you know what, thanks for your input, thanks for your suggestion, but I'm just not there yet. And that's actually what we're here to talk about today, is to talk about what it means to do things our way versus what it means to do things God's way. And we're going to look at this example in the Old Testament, and it really documents what it means to do things God's way. And I'm just going to be honest, we're going to cover a little bit of Scripture today. And don't worry, there's not going to be an exam at the end of this. You're not going to have to memorize every person's name and place, just at ease, okay? And be honest, I'm leading us through this, and I don't know if I didn't study as much, I'd have all this stuff memorized, so I get that. But so Joshua is leading God's people into the land that God had promised them, and there are people in the land, right? So talk about awkward. Right? So they finally cross the Jordan, and they're in the land, and right away they come across, and there's people in the land. And on one side you have Joshua, and you have the Israelites, and you have God of the angel armies, and you have the Lord on their side. On the other side you have these people, and they kind of go back and forth about how bad these people were. So best case scenario, they just sacrificed each other to their gods. Worst case scenario, they sacrificed their kids to these gods. So these are some bad people. And then on the other hand, you have God's people, and somebody's got to go. And so let's pick it back up in Joshua chapter 6, verse 1. Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Verse 2, then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. And then he gives Joshua the orders. And he goes, they're yours. I've given you this. Here's how to do it. Verse 3, march around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. And on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priest blowing the trumpets. And when you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the army will go up, everyone straight in. And so he gives Joshua these orders, and then Joshua immediately gives us the secret to the blessings of God. Don't you want the blessings of God on your life? Right? I do. Sign me up. If I were to tell you, hey, I've got the secret to living a great life and not making big mistakes, wouldn't you want to know what that is? I know I would. Sign me up. How many pills do I need to take? What conferences do I, what books do I need? Whatever it is, I want the secret. And Joshua right here gives the secret. Because the truth is this, and we say this all the time here, but obedience brings blessing. So it starts with submission, and then you see the blessings of God come. It's not the other way around. It's not because you bless me, God, I'm going to obey. But that's so often with how our culture is. And how often, if we were honest, you and I live our life. God, you were faithful. You came through, so now I'm going to start coming to church every week. God, you came through in a big way, and we didn't owe as much on our tax return this year, so now I'm going to start serving. Now I'm going to start tithing. And Joshua goes, no, that's not how this works. because obedience brings blessing. Let's pick this up and let's find out what happens with Joshua. Verse 6. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. And he ordered the army, advance, march around the city with an armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord. So Joshua has this plan, and he immediately executes. Joshua doesn't push back. Joshua doesn't sit around and go, you know what, like, let's just talk about this. Like, that seems crazy. And I love our campuses, all of our campuses. We have so many incredible men and women of the military in our campuses. It's amazing. And, yeah, absolutely. We'll honor you. Let me talk to you for just a second. Like, if you were given this battle plan, what would you say? Right? It's kind of crazy. Like, and Joshua, like, it's kind of anti, but remember, Joshua just came through God going, I'm in charge, so just trust me, and I've already given it to you, and here's what you need to do, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to know. And Joshua, and God basically to Joshua says, okay, Joshua, sit down, here's the plan. Like, okay, we're going to approach the enemy. Yeah, okay. And we're going to get everyone together. Yeah, okay. And we're going to march. Around the place. Did I say that? No? Okay, yeah, around the place. And then we're not going to say a word, and then we're going to go home. Okay? You sure? Can I ask again? Like, are you sure? Like, that's the plan? Like, when's the part where we, like, bring our swords out and kick doors down and go like, this is Israel? Like, where is that part in the plan? And the truth is this, like, this is not a really good plan if it were dependent on the Israelites. God's plans for your life would not be great plans if they were dependent on you to execute. Can I get an amen? But here's the good news about that. The good news is the plan was not dependent on the Israelites. The plan was dependent on God to do the work. And the plans that God has for your life, like, they're not dependent on you to do the work. They're dependent on God to do what he said and be faithful, and you can trust that he is. And because the truth is this, if it happened any other way, like if it took the Israelites kicking down doors, breaking their swords out, like if that were all the plan, it would have been really easy for the Israelites to do what you and I do probably on a regular basis, and that's take credit for the Almighty. And that's to take credit, and maybe some pride would come up and go, maybe I am that good. Or maybe I am that smart. Like, maybe I am that good with my finances. Maybe I am that good of an athlete. But the truth is this, it's so hard to take credit for marching and shouting, isn't it? And it's hard. So God gives them plans and instructions that it's kind of hard for them to take credit for. And I want you to miss this. Like, God's plans require one thing from you. That's it. God's plans, I mean, they're demanding. And they do require one thing from you. And that one thing is obedience. All God's asked is just say yes and trust me with the rest. Like, you just follow the instructions one step at a time and trust that I got you. God's plans require one thing from us, and that's obedience. And although it's clear, and although it's simple, God's plan is demanding. It requires you to say yes. And the truth is, that's the beginning of freedom in your life. That's the beginning of freedom in my life. And I get it. God's ways sometimes seem kind of anti-productive, counterculture. God, if I do it your way, like no one's doing it. God, if I've done the math, I've added it up, and we don't have enough money to pay the bills as it is, so to give you 10%, like, that's crazy. And God goes, you can't pay the bills to begin with. Why not just trust me? Why not just trust me? What do you have to lose? You've done the math. You're not going to pay them anyway. So just trust me with it. And I get it. God's ways can seem crazy. And because they're coming from a God who sent his son Jesus. And when you look at the life of Jesus, when you truly study the life of Jesus, you talk about counterculture. Just listen to this for a second, okay? Like, so this is Matthew writing about his eyewitness account of Jesus speaking. And in this moment, he's talking to his close circle of followers, and Jesus is kind of giving them a heads up. Like, he's like, listen, I'm going to die. Like, this is going to happen. Like, don't be alarmed, you know. Like, he's telling the plan. And the plan seems crazy. But right in the middle of this talk, Jesus drops this little nugget, I call it like of radical brilliance. And he says this, and Matthew is quoting Jesus, and says, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. So I just want to take a moment. If you're here today, you're listening in, you're watching online, and you're like, I can't get on board with the whole I can't get on board with the whole God thing. Like, I can't get on board with the church. I can't get on board with religion. Like, I'm just off put by that. I just want to take a moment and give you an out. Like, if you can't get on board, with church, the idea of church, you can't get on board with, like, religion and organized, like, I get it. That's okay. Like, let's just start with getting on board with Jesus. Because let's just start there with Jesus, okay? Because many people have said this, but I want you to listen so carefully to this. Like, anyone that can predict his death, predict his resurrection, and then actually pull it off, like, I'm just going to go with what that guy says. And I may not understand everything he says. And there may be a lot of stuff that he's saying, I'm going, if I were in charge, yeah, but I didn't predict my death. I didn't predict my resurrection. I have not died yet. And most likely, like, I'm not coming back from that grave. So I'm just going to trust this guy and what he says. Not to mention, here's the deal. So not only did Jesus, like, predict his death, predict his resurrection, and then actually pull it off, but there were actually eyewitnesses that watched it and then wrote books about it. And the cool thing is those books, like, didn't contradict each other. And in fact, one of those people that had eyewitness for Jesus' life was his brother and still said he was the Son of God. Just a moment, like, how many of your brothers or sisters would say you're the Son of God? Anybody? No? What would your brothers or sisters say about you up here, right? And so if you can't get on board with the idea of, like, religion or church, then surely you can get on board with the idea of Jesus and what he's saying here. And then let's address that whole, like, God's ways are crazy thing. Let's just call the elephant out of the room. Like, God's ways don't make a lot of sense. Like, sometimes God will tell you to do something, like, honor, put someone else's feelings before your own. Like, love someone else more than you love yourself. Like, are you kidding me? Like, give away 10% of my income to the church. Like, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Let's just talk about that for just a moment, because God knew that. And Jesus knew that. And so, like, he spoke to it. And I want you to check this out. This is from Isaiah, all right? And Isaiah was this prophet, and Isaiah predicted the birth of Jesus. He predicted the life of Jesus. He predicted that people would despise and hate him. He predicted that Jesus would keep his mouth shut as he was accused. He predicted his death, and then guess what? Jesus came and actually did all that stuff, and we know he did all that stuff because we have, like, several eyewitness accounts that wrote books about it, and all of those eyewitness books actually support what Isaiah said. And guess what? Isaiah said this like 700 years before Jesus even showed up. And Isaiah says this, and Isaiah is quoting God when he says this. He says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." So God right off the bat says, listen, I get it. Like, my ways are going to be different than your ways. He says, listen, like, I get it. Like, my ways, like, are they're counterculture. No one's doing it, and you're going to feel like you're all alone. You're going to feel like a freak. There's going to be moments of that. God says, listen, I understand. My ways and your ways, they're not always going to sync up. And if you were in charge, you'd probably do things differently, but I've got a better perspective than you do. And he says this, and then he says this next part. And this next part is so powerful because he then gives us the ability to trust him, that his ways are different, because he says this is so good. He says, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And he says, listen, I get it. Like, my ways are different than your ways. Like, listen, they're just different, but you just need to trust me when I say that my ways are higher than your ways. My ways are better than your ways. So, yeah, you can ask why, and I may not be able to give you all the answers of why right in the moment, but you just need to trust and obey what I'm telling you. And then I ask you this question, where have you heard that before? Where have you heard that before? Where have you heard, like, just trust me, just do it. Just obey, just do it, just trust me. No, I don't have time to explain to you why you can't put a fork in the electrical outlet. Just trust me that you can't do that. Just trust me and to obey. Like, don't raise your hands, but how many of you had parents that said, just trust me, just do it. Just do it. Just obey, just do it. Yes, Daddy, yes, Mommy, like, and just do it. Or how many of you have kids and you tell your kids, just trust me, just do it. Like, I know you may not understand why. I don't have time to explain to you why right now. But just do it and just trust me. And the truth is this, like, just because you don't understand something doesn't make it not true. And any of you that have done your kids' math homework recently, like, you know this. I love it. We had Angie join our team, been doing a phenomenal job. Angie Crane joined our office team and just been crushing it, doing an incredible job. And she was there. Her family, her kids were there a couple days ago, a week ago. Some time all blurs together these days. And the kids are running around, and she's saying, "Do your homework." You know, she'd be a mom. And so I was standing there observing this, and I was like, I'm not doing anything right now. I was like, I can help. And so, like, I think I sat down. I think it was Reagan, and I sat down with Reagan, and I'm helping her do her math homework. Let's do some math homework. Okay. I was sitting there, and I say helping her, like, I use that term very loosely. And so, like, I'm sitting here, and 2 problems in, she's like, "Is this how I do it?" And I'm like, uh-huh. That's probably how you do it. And, you know, because the truth is this, like, just because you don't understand something, like, doesn't mean that it's not true, right? Just because you don't understand God's ways doesn't mean that his ways aren't best. Doesn't mean that his ways aren't true. So when God says, like, do things my way, he doesn't say that because they make sense. Always. When God says do it my way, it's not because it seems right and everyone's doing it. Like, he says do it his way because they're best. And let me ask you this. You trust a doctor with your life, don't you? Right? Some of you have had medical procedures this year. Some of you are in the middle of a medical moment right now where you're needing God to move in a big way. Let me just ask you this question. Let me ask you a question I already know the answer to. Did you understand everything that your doctor said to you? Did you understand half? Right? Like, you don't trust a doctor because what they're telling you always makes sense. You don't trust a doctor because, like, oh, everyone's doing it and this is going to be fun. Like, no. You trust a doctor because you trust the source. You trust the source. And I'm here to tell you, like, when you don't understand the instructions, then trust the source. So when God tells you, like, do it this way, and I want you to do it this way, I want you to listen, and you don't understand it, just trust the source. Trust God. You trust a doctor, trust God. So trust God with your finances. Do it. Trust God with your money. Because God knows, like, your money and your heart, they're connected anyway. And God's after your heart. It's not really about your money. Like, if you think that God needs your money, then you must not have a big understanding of who God is. Because God doesn't need your money. But God knows that your money and your heart are connected. And here's the truth. I don't need to share a verse with you to back that up. I don't need to share, like, some statistics with you to convince you that your heart and your money are connected. Like, because I'll just ask you this. When your bank account tanks, what does your heart do? You got quiet in here. I thought they were done talking about money. Nope. Jesus talked about it a lot. So don't get upset. I like that. You can clap. Navarre, I know you're clapping right now. It's okay. I know you're clapping. We get on board with what Jesus said because not because we understand everything in the instructions, because we understand and we trust the source. Or let me ask you this, right? Like, what about relationships? Like, do it God's way. So you ask, okay, God, should we move in together? God, should I sleep with him? Should I sleep with her? And it's not like there's a big verse for this. And by the way, you don't always need a verse. Like, sometimes it's just asking the question, like, okay, in light of my current circumstances, in light of my past, and in respect to where I want to be in the future, and in respect to the fact that God called me to love this person that I'm with. Now, I'm not talking about physical love. I'm talking about love, the difficult kind of love. Should I do it? Should I sleep with him? Should I sleep with her? Should we move in together? Like, well, when you put it that way, probably not, right? I mean, that when you ask it that way, it pretty much solves it. And you're like, but it feels good. Okay, for how long? I can't believe he went there. I can't believe he said that in church. But this is so often the issue. So often. And in the same way that Joshua asked, whose side are you on? Like some of you, when I say this, there's like a wall that's gone up and your arms are, and it's my way or the highway. Like, and because you've gone in your life and you've asked the exact same question to God. So when Joshua says, whose side are you on? You've asked God the exact same question. Okay, God, whose side are you on here? Like, are you for me or are you against me? And here's the truth. Like, it makes perfect sense. In the same way you thought when you were younger, like your parents were against you. In the same way you thought, like, oh, it's my way versus my parents' way. And now as you get older, now it's just your way versus God's way. And it makes perfect sense when you look at this through the light and through the lenses of your kids, right? The truth is this. You have kids. You're not against your kids. You are for your kids. Like, you want what's best for your kids. And I'm here to tell you today. Like, I don't know what your perspective of God was, or your perception, or your view, or your belief. But if you've ever gone through your life and struggled and asked the question, God, I just feel like you're against me. God, I feel like your ways are way different. God, I just feel like it's my way versus your way. And you say, God, whose side are you on? God's going, it's not about sides. God, it's not about whose side I'm on. Like, that, just bump that. Like, it's not that I'm against you. I'm not against you. In fact, I am for you, is what he says here. God says, I am not against you. God says, I am for you. And there's this point, talking about kids and parenting, and there's this moment in every parent's life where as a kid, your parents make this shift, and they shift from being your authority to being your friend. And I don't know when that shift happens. Like, there's not really an age on when that happens. But usually that shift happens like when we truly believe that our parents are for us. Like when you finally understand and say, you know what, I may not have understood every rule that they said. I may not have understood like everything that they told me. But I believe that they were for me. And you said, like, listen, I may not have understood all of the rules that they had. My parents, I couldn't stay out past 11 p.m. And in the moment I could not understand that. I couldn't understand why my parents put that curfew on me. But looking back, my parents knew me so well, and they knew that my future depended on how I excelled where I was. And that I needed a full night's sleep to excel. And it's not because my parents were against me, it's because my parents knew me, and they wanted what was best for me, and they had such desire to lead me well. Amen. And looking back, I'm so grateful. I didn't understand why in the moment I couldn't get a tattoo when I turned 18. And now I'm so grateful because I don't have an American Gladiator tattoo on my lower back. Like, I'm grateful. Mom and Dad, thank you. I don't understand everything that they said. But my parents had a handle on the bigger picture for my life. And I didn't understand at the moment. And God, you may not understand right now in the moment that God has a bigger handle on your life because God has a perspective that you can't see. So when he says to do something and when he gives instructions for your life, understand that he has your past, he has your present, and he has your future in mind. And his plans are not to hurt you. Even though in the moment you may not understand it, the truth is this, at the heart of it, God is a father who just wants the best for us. And we know he's a father because he calls us his children, and he invites us to call him daddy. God is a father who just wants what is best for his kids. And even though his kids run around slamming their head against the wall and wondering why their head hurts, and God goes, I've got bigger plans for you. I want to take you to this. This is Jesus talking. And at the moment, most people believe Jesus was talking to a large crowd and then a small crowd at the same time in Matthew. And Matthew, again, is quoting Jesus' talk when he says this. He says, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Jesus says, listen, like, I know you love your kids. Like, But if people who have sin and do evil things, like even they love their kids, it's not enough just to love your kids. He says this, he says, even they would not give their kid a snake when they asked for a piece of bread. He then asks this question, and this question like flips everything on its head. He says this, he says, how much more will your Father give good gifts to those who ask? And let me just ask you, what areas in your life, like have you been doing things your way? What areas in your life have you been stiff-arming God and taking control and said, you know what, God, it's you versus me, it's my way versus your way? No holds barred. And I just got to tell you, like God's here to tell you that it was never you versus God. Never once in your life was it your way versus God's way. Because God's saying, listen, it's not about sides. It's not about who I'm against. Like, it's about who I'm for. And God says, I'm for you. God says, I am for you. He's telling you, like, put down the gloves. Like, just put, like, this is not a fight. In the same way you're not against your kids, God's not against you. He's for you. And God's ways are always better. Always. And the truth is this, until we surrender and do things God's way, we will continue to stumble our way through life. And one question, and I'll just end with this question. If you were to understand this, that if God had a plan for your life, if God had a better way for you to do things, like, wouldn't you want to know? Well, yeah. Yeah, I'd want to know. I desperately want you. Desperately. And maybe for the first time to not have to wonder if there's a better way, but to know it. Because you come to the conclusion that so many people in the past have come to, and that's okay, enough, I give up. God, let's do things your way. And they've never looked back. Because they've seen what God says. When he says, my ways, yeah, they're different. Yeah, they're not your ways. But my ways are higher. And if you're here today, and maybe you've had a terrible relationship with your earthly father, and you're like, listen, I can't get on board with this idea of God being a good father because I didn't have a good father here. Like my dad hurt me, my dad abused me. Or maybe your story is like, my dad just took off. Like, I didn't have a dad. I'm here to tell you right now that God is calling you. God is drawing you in because he has always stood in the gap for you. Even though you may not have known it, even though you may not have seen him or felt him, like God has always stood in the gap for you. And right in this very moment, God is calling you. God is drawing you to him. God is inviting you to call him Daddy and to call him the good Father that he is. And so don't go another day doing things your way. Don't go another day, okay, what should I do? Right now, I want to ask all of our campuses just to bow your heads and close your eyes. If you're here, like, and you've never put your faith in Jesus, I've got some really good news for you. But let me start with the bad news. The bad news is you and I and every person who has breathed other than Jesus, we've messed up. We've made mistakes. I've told lies. I've gossiped. I've stolen. And you have too, if we were honest. And the problem is those mistakes are called sin. And that sin is anything wrong that we do. And that sin, no matter how much or how little, like, it separates us from God. In fact, the consequence for that sin is eternal separation from God when we die. And there's going to come a day when you breathe your last breath. There's going to come a day when I breathe my last breath. And that would be a really bad place to end the story. But our story doesn't have to end there. In fact, God sent his son Jesus, who's called the Christ, to live a perfect life and to die an imperfect death, to take responsibility and pay the price for my sin and for your sin on the cross. And he was buried in a grave just like he said he would be. And 3 days later, he rose to life just like he said he would. And it's through faith in him that we can find life and spend eternity with him when we die. So like Joshua had to submit to God and Joshua had to trust God, you and I have to do the exact same thing. And if you've never done that, I want to invite you right now in this moment to do that. And all you have to do is pray to God and invite him into your life. And right now, across all of our campuses, we're going to pray this together. And I want you to repeat after me. This is not, and by the way, you're not praying to me. I'm just a man. I cannot save you. It is through faith in God alone that your hope is found. But maybe you're praying to God for the very first time. We're going to all pray this together to support those that are going to pray it for the very first time. And we're going to pray this out loud together. Everybody together say, Dear Jesus, I know I've sinned. I've done things I know are wrong. And because of my sin, I need a Savior. I believed you lived a perfect life, died on the cross for my sin, and rose from the dead 3 days later. I place my hope in you, my trust in you. Now teach me how to live. With every head still bowed, with every eye still closed right now. If you're here, or you're watching online, or you're in Navarre or Blackwater, and you prayed that prayer for the very first time, and you decided to trust God for the very first time, in just a moment, I'm going to count to 3, and I'm going to ask you to be bold. I'm going to ask you to be brave. I'm going to ask you to have courage. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, and I promise we're not going to embarrass you. We're not going to single you out. In fact, we're just going to celebrate together, and we're going to put resources in your hands that are going to help you on your journey of following Jesus. So right now, across all of our campuses, when I count to 3, I want you to be brave and have courage, and I want you to raise your hand when I count to 3. Say 1, 2, 3. Right now, if that's you, raise your hand. All of our campuses right now. Awesome, awesome. Now I want you to listen. I want you to listen. If today was the day you gave your life to Jesus, if you're watching online, I want you to type in the comments if that was you. And we'd love to invite you, whether you raised your hand or you didn't, I'd love to invite you to stop by the blue tent on your way out and let somebody know. And let somebody know, say, and I want you to go up and I say, Jesus made me new today. And then your next step is baptism. And you can go on our website and you can register to be baptized, or you can stop by the connection tent on your way out and let them know, hey, sign me up. I want to get baptized. And that's coming up real soon. Awesome. One more time, guys. Let's make some noise for all God did. And right now, I want to turn this over to our campus leaders.
So good. Great job, Tyler.
Love them.
So let's just give it up for Tyler McNeely. What an awesome message that was. Oh my goodness. So good. So good. Well, if you just gave your life to Jesus, Tyler just walked you through your next steps. But the truth is, we all have a next step to take, because it's truly impossible to follow Jesus without taking a next step. And it has everything to do with the message that Tyler just preached today. Because the things that we do for next steps sometimes don't make a lot of sense in the world, okay? Like going to 101 or joining a serve team and giving up your Sunday for Jesus. That doesn't make a lot of sense in the world, but that's God's way. So what I want you to do is I want you to go out to that blue tent and connect with some of our volunteers and ask them, what is my next step? And they will help walk you through that. Or you can go online, momentumchurch.org/next steps, learn about all the different kinds of next steps and where you need to take your next step. Now, Tyler mentioned baptisms, and so we are actually going to have a baptism during the gatherings on December 16th. That's just in just a few weeks. So if you have given your life to Jesus, if you've decided to follow Jesus, but you have never been baptized, then we want you to sign up today. You can, again, go out to that blue tent or register online, momentumchurch.org/baptism. Now, we're going to go into a time of generosity. And we say here at Momentum that we get to honor God with our tithes and offerings. And we know for a fact that when you give, it's truly investing in eternity. Multiple easy ways to give, as you can see on the screens. And as we give, check out Doug and Terry's powerful tithing story.
we've been in church for a long time, but when it comes to tithing, we always went by what we made, and sometimes we tithe $10, $20. We tried the 90-day challenge before, and I'd write that check, and I'd be like, oh no, are we gonna have money at the end of the month?
Yeah.
So by Sunday, I would tear the check up, and there'd go another $10 or $20. And in January, when Pastor Tim talked about the 90-day challenge, I listened to what he said him and Stephanie went through. And so I decided, we can do this. God's gonna take care of us, we can do it. So I wrote our first check. And when he saw it, he said, what are you doing? And I said, we're gonna do 10%. And he said, okay. So I did. 2 to 3 weeks after that first check, he got introduced to a new VA rep that helped us figure out the benefits that he qualifies for. And we got higher benefits. We went from 40% to 50%. So 10% again. And it wasn't just the money part, it was the way we were doing things.
Mm-hmm.
We always put God first.
Yes.
And a lot of times we didn't. We always thought we could handle it. And no, you've got to have God handling.
And in this last year, I mean, everybody knows I've had a lot of medical problems, surgeries and all that. I just turned it over to the Lord and said, hey, I'm not quite ready to go unless you can tell me directly I'm coming home. And then our income, of course, comes once a month, which was entirely different to what we lived. Started out living week to week, and it went to 2 weeks, and we had never handled a whole month, which just added more pressure on us, so that when, you know, oh man, we can't do that, we'll have to wait a while and try that. So we give $10 or $20. And then the next thing you know, we got here, and we just loved the church and God so much in here that Terry told me, she said, after I found it, she said, yeah, we're gonna tithe 10% now. I said, well, that's awesome, let's try that. And it's blowed everything up. It's awesome.
We ended up going from his 40% disability to 100% disability. Our income has more than doubled. Used to, the last week of the month, I would be like, oh, what am I gonna do? We've gotta get gas, we've gotta get groceries. The money's always there. For some reason, it's always there. And the only reason is God.
And He'll take care of it. He does us.
We have paid off 4 bills.
Yeah. A
That,
couple of them pretty awesome. But
that I figured would take a year, and we've paid them off in the last 4 months. So we're blessed. I mean, you can't help but be blessed.
So good. Let's give Doug and Terry a hand for sharing that story. You simply can't outgive God. Well, I am super excited to tell you about a new series starting next Sunday called Falling into Grace. I promise you don't want to miss even a single week of this, and it is a wonderful series to bring a friend. So bring somebody back with you. Make it a great week, and God bless.
The snow's coming down. I'm watching it fall. Lots of people around. Baby, please come home. The church bells in town, all ringing song, full of happy sounds. Baby, please come home. They're saying deck the hall, but it's not like Christmas at all.